Hello, welcome back to another episode of commUNITY. I'm Gabe from Mix 94.1. I'm joined today, very thankful to have Willis Gordon, Chairman of the Political Action Committee and Community Outreach Chairman for the Stark County NAACP. Willis, thank you for taking the time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
So things are just unprecedented right now. I know we use this term a lot, uncertain times, all these cliches that we've been using, we started using for the pandemic, and then we've had a whole social shift occur very pointedly right on the tail end of that. So it's really just been one thing after the other. At the 30,000 foot view, your role within the NAACP focuses on a lot of things. We've talked about, the myriad titles you've had, but right now, what kind of things are the NAACP really diving into, things that are impacted by this moment, Black Lives Matter, law enforcement reform? I mean, just from a larger sense, and we can dive in specifically later. I know you're working on some things, but give viewers a sense of what is the NAACP, what is the big push for you guys right now?
Well, the two biggest things that we're doing right now is we are trying to get folks ready for the election, being able to get folks registered to vote, turned out to vote, and in ways that are safe and that are reliable, so they can get as much information as they can about being able to vote by mail, or where their polling places are, or how to make sure that they're actually still registered if they've moved or anything else like that. And the other bit is police reform. So working with our local communities, the nice thing about this NAACP is that it's for all of Stark County. So there's a lot of different folks and diverse groups that I can work with across the board. So for this instance, I'm sort of working on voter registration and turnout, and then police reform. And then we're also trying as hard as we can to work with the health department and a few other people to make sure that COVID testing is getting done around the county. We were able to do a nice pop-up testing a little while ago here, I think in early June, and we're looking to get another as well.
So you mentioned three things that I think right now are just so intractable from each other: voter registration and the election in general, which, is only 4 months away. We're in August, and it's a presidential election year. Doesn't feel like it at all, but it is. You mentioned law enforcement reform and policy reform within those agencies, and you mentioned the health concerns of COVID-19. How has the health issues really impacted your ability to push forward on something as widespread as voter registration?
Right. Well, it's been, I think disastrous would be like the initial term.
Sure.
And then, and now it's just a sort of, it's not an all stop anymore. It's more of an obstruction. Okay. So I don't feel comfortable doing what I really love to do, which I know is weird, but going door to door. I really do love going door to door in the community, registering people to vote, checking on folks, doing wellness checks, talking to them, seeing what issues matter to them, and just really being in communication with them. So, I'll walk down wards 2, 4, and 6 in Canton, and people are beeping at me because I'm a voter registration guy, and I love that part of it. But with the spread of coronavirus, it's not a wise thing to do, especially when, I'm going up into communities with old folks and at-risk people. So what I've done is I've developed a process of contactless voter registration. And so I've taken the same lists of folks who have been purged by the Secretary of State and some of the other members in the community as well, but we're focusing on those purged voters right now. And to get a hold of them, either send an information packet, have a voter registration form, let them know who it's from, what it's about, what their situation is, and then have a postage paid envelope that they can send their voter registration form directly to the Board of Elections. So they don't have to do anything. They just receive the package, hey, we're going to be there between 12 and 2, on Saturday. It's, so we kind of sound like the cable people, right? We're going to be in this window somewhere. So we show up, we drop it off. We don't talk to you. We're distant. We're kept. But when you open that packet, some volunteers will have, and we're going to have volunteers. I'll tell you about that later. But the envelopes will be stuffed, addressed to you, telling you what your situation is, why this has happened, and then how you can rectify it. Why were you purged by the Secretary of State? How did that process come to be? And then here's how you can rectify that situation to get your right to vote back. So now you go and you re-register to vote, and all you got to do is stick it back in the mailbox. You don't have to buy it. You don't got to buy a stamp. You don't got to do it. Just stick it back in the mailbox, put the flag up, you're done. So we're making sure that that's happening now for those voters. And then we're also going to be doing some phone banking to educate some of our already registered voters in the community about vote by mail and about how to participate in this election.
I think it's a great point that you hit on with voter purge, because I think right now with the current climate of attitudes when it comes to mail-in voting or absentee voting, which are the same thing, just in case anyone is confused, what you're doing with voter registration, there's no way to misconstrue it. It is apolitical. People get purged for any number of reasons. It's not a punishment to be purged. Do you find often that people think that, well, I've never moved, so why would I be purged? Or, I've not changed a circumstance, or I didn't get married and change my name, or I got married and I didn't change my name, so I'm good. I mean, how easy is it for somebody like you or myself or anybody, living in Stark County to be purged from a voting roll and not know it?
Well, the criteria they had was if you haven't voted in 6 years, we booted off the voter rolls. So what I said for the 2019 local elections here was that if you voted for, let's say you voted for Mitt Romney or Barack Obama in 2012, and then, like far too many Americans, you skipped all your local elections and your midterms. Yeah. And then 2016 came around and you didn't like either one of the candidates, and you said, you know what, for the first time in a while, I'm just going to stay home. Well, after 2017 and 18 and 19 roll around, well, you might say, well, you know what? Times have changed. I think I want to get up and I want to go vote. And you go vote in 2019 and you're no longer on the voter rolls. And you've been purged because you haven't voted in 6 years more. And so that to me is unfair. That to me is that's not how our Constitution should work, and that's not how the right to vote should work. And even though it's the Secretary of State's office that is carrying out this task, I do want to make it known here that the Secretary has communicated he doesn't necessarily like this practice, but there's nothing he can do about it because it's through the House, it's through the Assembly, the State Assembly. So if they change that law, we don't have to worry about this. And you don't have to have organizations, non-governmental organizations like the NAACP running around trying to put the eggs back in the basket and saying, re-register you since you've been purged, because these people, through no fault of their own, may not know exactly what's going on, but they can end up purged from the voter rolls. And then if they're not told in time, now they can't vote. So we don't want that to happen to anyone. It can happen just like that. There's a little mailer that comes out that'll come to you. But if you're not expecting anything from the government, half of the people just throw those things away.
You're not going to pay attention to it.
So it is very easy for it to happen, because the majority of people that I saw face to face when I let them know this stuff had no idea that they'd been purged or that purge program. So it's very simple for somebody to get purged.
And again, just to reiterate, the people you're helping to re-register and maybe register for a first time, I'm sure it's not like you turn them away. It is more about the fundamental right to vote versus who you are voting for or what political ideology you have. So I personally, I think it's fantastic that you and your organization with the Stark County NAACP, your team of volunteers and staff members, this is a big cause, and it's not just a big cause because it's a presidential election year. midterms are important. State elections are, voting for your mayor is important. So I think it's great that you guys are doing that. So you mentioned a bit about your contactless program. You kind of gave us the overview for it. Obviously, you're going to need some bodies for that. And yes, you have a great plan in place to keep everybody safe. If I'm looking to volunteer to, just help with the voter registration and turnout initiatives, what are you looking for? How am I going about that?
Well, you can go to Stark County NAACP's Facebook page, or you can find my personal Facebook page and send us a message. Once you send us a message to say, hey, I want to volunteer, we're going to have 2 dates. I believe they are Friday and Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Ken Weber Goodwill campus on 9th Street in downtown Canton. You show up there. Now, part of the thing to keep everybody safe is we're only taking 10 people per day.
Okay.
So once we reach that max, we'll let you know, hey, we've reached our cap for the day, but we'll keep it in mind and we'll let you know when there are other opportunities to volunteer. So once we get those people, they'll be filling out envelopes, stuffing envelopes, or phone banking to educate people on vote by mail. So those are the things that we're kind of doing this weekend. So yeah, you can go on our social media and find us there. I am currently in the midst of working on getting our website developed and working with a developer to make sure that they can build a good website for the Stark County NAACP. I have also undertaken the task of modernizing our organization.
No small feat ever. No small feat.
Right. I've kind of told other folks internally, I know the NAACP was founded in 1909, but we don't have to act like it. Yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay. Shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned to me before we got started that you were just in a meeting yesterday with the Sheriff's Department. Some great news to share. I'm sorry?
Earlier today, I was with the Sheriff.
Earlier today, that's right.
Canton's administration and their chief.
That's right. Very big takeaways from that. And, I think one thing that everybody who lives in a non-metropolitan city, and we see these big cities on the news, we think that's not here. That, that doesn't really affect us. We may see 1 or 2 scaled instances and think that it's an outlier. But what's going on in the world right now with law enforcement reform, which I think is a great kind of blanket term, neutral blanket term. Firstly, can you speak to what I think is probably a widely underreported idea that everybody wants everybody to be safe.
Yes.
This is not a one group wants to change everything and the other group wants to stay the same. I mean, through your talks, are you finding that, yeah, everybody wants to have a better system and feel safer both on the job and around people who are doing their job as public safety officers?
Well, sure. And I'll tell you what, I've worked in close concert with Canton's administration and the Canton Police Department, Chief Jack Angelo, and the safety director, Angela Perry. Now, you're right, across the board, I think the big picture is we want our police departments to serve our communities. We want everyone to be safe. And we want there to be a level of trust and communication between people and the police departments that at present does not exist. And so how do we go about doing that? And the thing that you have to understand about police reform, and that I think everybody has to understand, especially from a law enforcement perspective, is that this is not something that has to be done to you. This is something that can be done with you. And you're part of the solution. Because what we're looking for here, it's not a political battle. It's not about what's left or what's right. It's about going forward. It's about progressing. It's about moving forward. It's about bringing a system that has some flaws in it and bringing it forward and modernizing it and creating positive solutions so the police department can do their job more effectively and the people don't have to continuously look over their shoulder because some element is going to, harm them in some way. They don't have to worry about, if I'm out on the road, do I have to worry? Do I have to take extra routes and go back roads so I know that I don't have to, run into a police officer? You shouldn't have to worry about it. But unfortunately, many people do, and for very good reason, because they've had a myriad of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been my dealing, and it's been my understanding with these police departments that they want to see these reforms happen. They want to see good things happen. They want to make sure it's done intelligently on the policy side of the house, so that it works and it's efficient and it works. But I think people just want a fair shake. That's all people want. I think anybody out there testing, anybody out who's being active for change, like if you're in my position or if you're in the position of any of these coalitions, people just want a fair shot. You know, if it's oversight, if it's reform, they just want to know the police are held to the same standards as everyone else, as a nurse, as a teacher, as a firefighter, as anybody else.
Mm-hmm. And so in that, one of the big things that has probably seen on everybody's feed at some point over the last couple months is the 8 Can Wait initiative. Could you kind of give a simple overview to anybody who might not be familiar? I think one thing we're bombarded with right now is we're bombarded with a lot of buzzwords through social media, and some of them are important, some of them maybe not so much, but there's just a lot of word clouds right now. So could you elaborate on that? You know, you don't have to go into details on every single thing, but.
Well, 8 Can't Wait is a policy grouping of eight policy reforms put out by Campaign Zero. And President Obama has come out, and a lot of other people have come out and sort of endorsed this as this is the least that police departments should be doing to fix some of these problems that we've seen around the country. Mm-hmm. You know, dealing with chokeholds, dealing with shooting at moving vehicles, dealing with use of force continuums, things like that. That if some of these policies had been tightened up in, you know, some of these areas, we might not have seen these problems, or at least we would have seen these problems persisting in the police department and in policing in general. So the 8 Can't Wait is a set of policies that is designed to sort of bring a police department forward and to send a signal out to people and say, hey, look, we're changing, we're evolving, we're progressing, and we are here to address the specific issues that have caused so many problems so many other places. And it's not a matter of, like you said, you know, if you're in a non-metropolitan area where you might think, you know, oh, well, you know, can this really even happen here? Or it hasn't happened here yet, or we're unaware of it happening here because it's not a metropolitan area, so there's not a lot of media about it, which is the case in Canton and Stark County. These things do happen here. It's just the fact that a lot of the times you don't hear about it because maybe it happened in 2003 or 2006 or 2009, and there wasn't a big social media upheaval about it. But, you know, there are use of force instances in a lot of these areas in Stark County where these things are happening, but not a lot of people are hearing about it. And the issue is, it's not about which time it's going to happen, it's that it can happen at any time. And so you have to be prepared for those eventualities. And by creating good policy, you show people that, you know, you can create all the policy in the world and some bad cop can still do something wrong. But having policy there and the culture in place allows your community to know this is not who we are, and this is not our culture, and this is an anomaly that we are going to get rid of right now. So that helps people bring it along, and 8 Can't Wait is sort of the emblem of that reform.
Thank you. That's a very thorough, but not completely granular explanation of it. I think one of the things, and as we kind of close up on this topic, I'd love to know your thoughts on how do we continue to spread trust? I think one of the big things right now is there's a lot of different segments of communities that a large basis of what we are dealing with, whether it is the pandemic or whether it is social justice and law enforcement reform, trust has got to be there. We have to trust, you know, the people that we are disagreeing with to hold their word, and they have to trust that it is not just, you know, the other side from them is not just rabble rousing and trying to just stir the pot. So, you know, I always think of trust in these situations. It's almost, you know, a faithful negotiation. How do you find the best way to communicate to both, both sides of an arrangement or a negotiation. The trust can be there. We can trust each other to make these positive changes. I trust, to your point about having policy in place, if somebody does something that is not appropriate or that is against that policy, I trust that that is not a representation of you, just like I'm trusting you not to think that's a representation of us. What's kind of been your strategy or your thoughts on how to foster that trust?
Well, what police departments and communities have is a relationship, right? In any relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, professional, the foundation of every relationship is trust. And if that trust is broken at some point, it can be very difficult to get it back. But here in this arena, when you're talking about policing and you're talking about the community, divorce is not an option. We're stuck with each other. And so in a society where we are more and more interdependent every day, we got to learn how to work with each other. And your success is dependent on my success and vice versa. So when it comes to fostering trust and building up trust, it has to be about results. It's got to be results based at first. So right now, if there were people who didn't believe that we could get a Can't Wait done in camp, they'll commit to it, they'll put it on a Blu-ray Review Commission, they'll put it on a shelf, and it'll never get done. Well, now in the next week, you're going to see it's going to roll back. It's going to go out to Campaign Zero for evaluation. It's going to kick back, and we'll have adopted these policies and they'll be on the books. The next thing you got to do is you got to make sure the chief and everyone else has to make sure that those things are trained throughout the department, because you can have the policy books, but if you're not training on it, it's not going to matter. It's symbolic. So I think people have to see results happen and see these things happening, and they say, okay, these reforms are coming through, they're training on them, we are seeing some change happen. And now, after that, they might be able to say, okay, we trust that if we're going to ask for something and agitate and advocate for something, that it'll get done. And after a time, if those things get done, they'll stick. And after that the culture has changed and things are moving forward. And I think that that's the way you build trust, is by continuously sort of building upon results and showing, okay, these things are happening, they're continuing to happening, and the progress is holding, we're protecting our gains. And I think that that's the way you sort of build up trust in any relationship, whether it's professional, whether it is interpersonal, whether it's platonic or romantic or whatever. Those sort of exercises is what really builds trust.
Wow, that was very well said. I don't think I could have explained it. If this doesn't work out for you, you can definitely be a relationship coach. You've got that going for you. Willis Gordon, Chairman of the Political Action Committee and Community Outreach Chairman for the Stark County NAACP. One last chance to get some info out on people who may be interested in volunteering to help with your voter re-registration and registration efforts. Yes.
So this Saturday and Friday at 2 p.m. over at the Ken Weber Goodwill campus on 9th Street, we are taking 10 a day. You're going to come in there, phone bank, or stuff envelopes and fill them out. Please have good handwriting, because I can't do it myself. But we're gonna have some people re-registered to vote. If you're interested in preserving the legacy of folks like John Lewis, in having a lot of these American traditions and moving forward and making some things happen, if you're interested in a way to give back to your community, please come out and reach out to us on the NAACP Facebook page or on my personal Facebook page at Willis Gordon. It's public, it's open. You can get a hold of me pretty easily. So come down there and help us out and get involved.
All right, and you can find more information on the Stark County NAACP. Just click the link below in the description. Thank you for taking the time today, Willis. Look forward to speaking to you again soon, and we will see you next time for the next episode of Community.
All right, thank you.